this last couple of days, I downloaded from Zoom and uploaded to YouTube all our many of our previous sessions and some of the classes even before we started the minyan. So about altogether about 85 clips that some of them are for an hour. So a lot of material is out there, but I still need to label it and go through it. But Bezat Hashem will be all available soon. Okay, so let's start with the discussion. Have halacha become stagnant? The answer is maybe I would not use the word stagnant, maybe paralyzed, maybe buried under layers of dust and dirt and neglect, maybe detached from reality, but it's not all of halacha, but some aspects of halacha did. So yes, we are stuck in place, unfortunately, because of the fear of some leaders in the Jewish community to lead as they were charged with, and they hide behind the back of previous generations, or by the claim that either it's not needed or we don't know what to do and we don't know who has the authority. So I can give examples, but I would like to hear from people here, and especially people who posted the question. Do you have examples where you feel that halacha is stuck, that halacha did not make the necessary progress? Anyone? Well,
I have a question, actually. It's from a discussion I had yesterday with a group of people about this topic. So it's something I've heard back and forth discussed based on the verse in Deuteronomy 17. You know, we have a question that's too difficult to decide, go to the Kohanim, Leviim, and Shoftim.
mm-hmm.
A constant theme that keeps coming up over and over again is the rabbis have the authority, meaning rabbis of all generations have the authority to rule in matters that are difficult. And it seems like such a system would allow for flexibility, but instead it's kind of taken the inverse effect.
Okay.
So one question is that the case? Is that verse gives the rabbis of all generations the allowance to determine everything? And also, what if it does, how can it be used as a useful tool to allow the flexibility that's necessary?
Okay. Okay. So I mean, okay, I'll open the chat also, even though since the recording is not okay. Yeah, so music on Yom Tov and Yom Tov Sheni. Okay, what else? That's it. Okay, you're a very compliant group. I thought you were different. I thought people were.
So
Yes, Mansoor.
we have the role of women. I think needs to be updated.
Women's role. Oh, okay.
I mean, the Torah.
One at a time. Let me call up people because everybody wants. So Joe says women's role. Women's role. Okay, Mansoor. Eli.
Yeah.
Eli.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Baruch haba. And Siona. Yes.
So I have a question for you that will help me understand this better. And the question I have for you is that, as you know, before the Shulchan Aruch was written, there was halakha that people followed. And what the question I have for you is and we know that things changed over time. Once it's written, it changes. Is it correct that it changed less once it was written? How do you compare the amount of change that took place in the way we do things before it was written down and after it was written down? Do you have any knowledge of that question?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. I'll address it. But I'll ask everybody to mute unless you want to say something. So Yosef, you have something, and then Netanel. We'll take some more questions and try to answer briefly, because this, like I said, it's a lot of my other podcasts and classes are about that, but we're doing it in this forum. Yes, Yosef?
one of the things that I always think about, and I know that there are solutions to it, is the eruv, is
Eruv.
eruv, and it seems
Right.
because like in the way that our neighborhoods and our homes are set up today do not reflect at all the reality that the eruv was put in. Like it was limiting already. It was limiting for the people in the Mishnaic times to keep them from doing work. But today it's imprisoning. It keeps people in prison rather than limiting them. And like to reevaluate how what our reshoots are, if there are these different reshoots, if there's a new reshoot, things like that. I think is something that we need to take a look at.
Okay, it's a good example. One more, and then we'll go because the example abound. Nathaniel, you wanted to say something before?
It was sorry, it's loud. The washing machine's in the back, but it was the question of pizza.
I have the dryer in the back. That's why you heard buzzes during the minha. Yeah.
But my question was about the machitza and the shul, and then the first question in regard to the rabbanim having authority.
Okay. So there two of the questions are general concepts, and then we have a Halakhic question on a general topic, and then specific things. So, but like I said, briefly, let's touch on those issues, and then if things come up, we'll do it as we go. Netanel's question is very important. That's actually, you could say it's the key to the whole thing. There are 5 words in the Torah. In Parashat Shoftim, the Torah says, let me put it on the screen. 1 second. So we could all, where is this? Yeah. 1 second, I'll go to Mechon Mamre. The Torah says, Ki yipale mimecha davar lamishpat. If there be something that you don't know the answer to, what do? Uvata v'kamta v'alachta el hamakom asher yivchar Hashem Elohecha lasum shemo sham. You will rise and go to the place that Hashem has chosen to place His name there. Here. If there arises a matter too hard for you in judgment, between blood and blood, between plea and plea, and between stroke and stroke, even matters of controversy within thy gates, you shall arise and get to the place which Hashem will choose. Uvata el kohanim alviyim ve'el shofet asher yihye bayamim ahem. And you will come to the judge that shall be in those days, and you would follow their ruling. And you have to follow everything that they teach you, and you should not deviate to the right or the left. And the one who would deliberately, presumptuously will not listen to the Kohen or to the Shofet, to the judge, will be put to death. So before we explain the pshat, we have to say that this paragraph, in my opinion, was taken out of context and explained by the rabbis as pertaining to the system that they created, and the Orthodox world is stuck in that mentality. What the paragraph speaks about is this: when it says "Ki yipale mimecha davar lamishpat," when you are unclear on a halachic, on a criminal law, davar lamishpat, it's not about halacha. You're not going to Yerushalayim to ask how many hours to wait between dairy and meat. You're not going to Yerushalayim to ask how much matzah to eat on Pesach. You see the formula of the pasuk shows that we have 2 sides: ben dam ledam, ben din ledin, ben nega lanega, divrei rivot b'sharecha. It's between one blood and another, between one din, one judgment, and another, between one nega and another. So nega could also be nega tzarat, leprosy, but then who's dealing with whom? So we must say that the nega here means a stroke, like translated here. Someone one person hit and caused physical damage to another, and now they go to judgment. And it's clearly here, divrei rivot b'sh'arei riv is a debate, an argument between two people. And then you go to the Makom Asher Yivhar Hashem, meaning that the pasuk, the paragraph speaks about two people, two parties who have a dealing, who have a problem, and they cannot settle the issue with their local judges because the local judges in many cases were shepherds or farmers like the rest of the people. They were the elders of the city, but they were not very knowledgeable. So you need to go to the central location of the temple where you have scholars, and they will tell you what to do. And the person who refuses to adhere to their judgment is one of the parties, one of the litigants. Why would he be punished so severely? Usually the Torah does not sanction the death punishment or even physical punishment for monetary laws. And here we're talking about monetary laws. But here, since the Torah speaks about enforcing the law, creating a law-abiding society, the Torah uses that punishment as a deterrent to make sure that people would abide by the law. And then, because if people would not follow the rulings issued by the judges, then you will have chaos. So you have to give the judges that power, which was never used. People were never executed for that. The rabbis took this whole thing, and I'm sorry to say, sort of twisted it, because they said that this speaks about a dispute between scholars. If the local judges in the villages are debating a certain halakha and they don't know what the halakha is, and they get up and they go to Yerushalayim, and now they bring it to the Supreme Court for discussion, and then if the Supreme Court rules in one way, they all have to follow it. And if one of the members of the minor bedin, the minor tribunals, refuses to accept it, he will be put to death. And that's how we created the halakha of Zaken Mamre, the rebellious elder, which is not mentioned in the Torah at all. The rebellious elder, so the rabbis took it out of context, out of the pshat of the pasuk, and said we are talking here about a defiant scholar who disagrees with the ruling of the rabbis. And I'm telling you, go back to the pasuk. We're not going to do it now. Look at the pasuk and the pshat. Look at all the commentators, and you decide what makes sense. So now, but I'll stick with this interpretation. The Torah speaks about two litigants who cannot settle the matter in their place, and where do they go? They go to the judge who lives in their time. And here the Gemara makes a very wise comment. It says, of course you're going to go to the judge who lives in your time, the contemporary judge. Where are you going to go? To a dead judge? Allah yarhamu, as they say, he already passed away, he died. You have to go to the local judge. The answer is, the rabbis say, Lomar lecha sheyiftach bedoro ki Shmuel bedoro. It tells you that it doesn't matter who the judge is. The fact that this person is the leader, you have to listen to him. Meaning that, in other words, you would say, Lo tasur yaminu smol, don't deviate to the right and the left. What if the person is wicked? We're not talking about a wicked person. We are talking about someone who was appointed by the public because he was the most capable person for that position. But maybe he's not as capable of someone who lived 200 years ago. Just think about the presidency. If you think about the way the founding fathers wrote and spoke, and you compare it to the way presidents in the last 100 years spoke, there's no comparison. They're of a different caliber altogether, right? Is someone going to say, I'm not going to listen to this president or the other president? No, once the president of this, you have to listen to him, because otherwise we are going to deteriorate into anarchy. So Torah says, you have to listen to the judge because he was appointed, but also the reverse is true. Not only we abide by the judge because we appointed him upon us, but the judge understands us because he lives with us. if you read the article that I sent last week or 2 weeks ago about Rabbi Yoshua going to Rabban Gamliel going to Rabbi Yoshua, not understanding his situation, he didn't know what Rabbi Yoshua did for a living, and Rabbi Yoshua tells him, "Oy lo lador shata menigo." If you're the leader, we are doomed. Why? You don't understand where we live, and therefore to conclude on what Nathanael said, Ashofet, only people who live in this day and time can understand reality. How can we expect rabbis who never had a glimpse of an idea of the possibility of virtual reality to rule on virtual reality? It is, as they say in the yeshivot, nish chayach. It says there's no connection. What do you expect Rambam? You want Rambam to say that the Zoom minyan is valid or invalid? He talks about his reality. We can't always look at this and look for precedents. Also, no problem. That touches on what Joey asked, and also maybe Nathanael. If the judges are all men, how can they understand women? How can they be bayamim ahem? Or like Eben comments, like if a rabbi who's very wealthy doesn't understand the needs of the poor. There's a good example in the Talmud. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Tarfon in Masechet Shabbat, Rabbi Tarfon omer, en madlikin, ela b'shemen zayit bilvad. He says on Shabbat, for Friday, you light candles only with olive oil. His colleagues tell him, Tarfon, we're not all as wealthy as you. We can't afford olive oil, right? A rabbi who tells a woman whose husband refuses her a get, we'll get it out. Don't worry, it will happen. He does not understand the emotional strife that this woman finds herself in. So the judge must put himself in the place of the people. And if you don't connect to people, communicate with them, you cannot understand. So how did we get stuck now in this situation? If the Talmud says very clearly, even after explaining this whole paragraph about the rebellious elder, but the Talmud still says, you go to the contemporary judge, right? So how come we are stuck in halakha? Because once halakha became written, and then we're going to Eli's question, right? Once halakha became written, there were those who said, wait a second, the books are on the shelf. They are part of our contemporary judge. For them, when you ask halakha of a rabbi who lives today, you also ask the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, Rabbi Yaakov ben Aro, and thousands of other rabbis, that the majority of whom do not understand our reality. And sometimes those are minute issues. This is the flip side of it is something that I always mention in class: the seat in life, the context, the historical context. You could say the same word today, it will mean something else than what it meant, even linguistically. I was discussing with my son. He was learning the halachot of Tfilat HaDerech, and they spoke about whether you need to say the prayer, Tfilat HaDerech, the traveler's prayer, when you go through Ginot Upardesim. So he translated, what is Ginot Upardesim? Gardens and orchards. So he told me he understood it was a scenic byway, a scenic route. When you go, you travel between orchards, and I said, no. When Talmud says Ginot Upardesim, gardens and orchards, it means a forest. There's no way, there's no path. It's safe to go there, but you're going to get lost. It will take you hours to get to the other side. Similarly, the word hit'amlut. Hit'amlut in modern Hebrew is exercise. And the Gemara says, you don't do hit'amlut on Shabbat. So people say, we don't exercise on Shabbat. But they forget that the word hit'amlut as exercise was invented in 1923 by Eliezer ben Yehuda. So the Gemara was definitely not talking about exercising. The Gemara was talking about medical massage. That was called hit'amlut back in the day. And not only that, even without knowing language, you don't even need to know language to understand that. Who exercised in the time of the Gemara? I'm not talking about the rabbis. No one, not only at the time of the Gemara, up until about 100 years ago, most people had no time for leisure. People worked hard. They were mit'amlim. They would do exercise all day. So and then some people say you can't exercise on Shabbat, but that's my own Shabbat anyway. So that answering your question, Nathaniel, is highlighted many other things. Now I want to answer Eli's question because it's important and because he has to leave earlier. So how did things change before the Shulchan Aruch, after Shulchan Aruch? So things always changed. There are long lists of things that used to be done and we don't do anymore. I actually once wrote a list of maybe 30 brachot that the Shulchan Aruch mentions that we don't say, and many minhagim of avelut, of mourning, that we don't do. But there are different rates of change. That is true. The more, on one hand, the more people are spread out, right, and they live in a greater dispersion in different communities, the greater the changes are. So could be sometime on an individual basis. On the other hand, the communication revolution was crucial in stifling diversity. Meaning, if a rabbi, as long as people taught orally, then there was constant. It was always in flux. There was always change because you say one thing and they hear another thing, and you know how it is. A classic example for that is in Masechet Pesachim, the Talmud discusses what happens if the 14th of Nisan falls on Shabbat. Because usually all the korbanot of Shabbat, you could make sacrifices on Shabbat. It's allowed, but you cannot do an individual sacrifice on Shabbat. But Korban Pesach is both individual and public. So they didn't know if the 14th of Nisan falls on Shabbat, you bring the sacrifice or not? And there's a whole discussion in the Gemara. But you know what we should do, all of us here, and anyone who says that there was tradition in Halakha, we should scream. What do you mean? The rabbis don't know whether you can bring the Korban on the 14th of Nisan. Well, it never happened before. It's the first time this happened in the first century before the Common Era, more or less, right? About 1500 years after the Torah was given. So for 1500 years, Pesach fell every couple of years. It fell on Shabbat, and people did what they did, and the rabbis didn't know what to do. How did they forget that, right? So it means that things were said, things were done, and people forgot. You know who remembered the halakha in that case? Not the rabbis, the people. Hillel told the rabbis about a certain detail of this halakha. I don't remember what, but you know what? The people will know what to do, and they did. Anyway, that was at the time when you had oral law. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wrote the Mishnah. He expunged, he pushed out a lot of different opinions were pushed out, including the opinion that women can be witnesses, including the opinion that you don't need 10 people from Minyan. All these was pushed out. Then when Rambam wrote his book, 1,000 years later, it became very popular. It was copied by many scribes and was distributed very fast, relatively to other works, and soon he dominated the field. The Rabbi Yaakov Baal HaTurim did a good work, but wasn't as didn't have this popularity like Rambam. But then when Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote the Shulchan Aruch, it happened after the invention of the printing press, and that what made it really the dominant voice. I mean, it's not the only thing. The other thing was the brilliance of Rabbi Yosef Karo in creating a system which was on one hand diverse, because he let a lot of voices be heard, and on the other hand decisive, because it was only his voice. But instead of saying this rabbi says, he says this is the halakha. Some say, some have the practice. So you're flexible. But Rabbi Yosef Karo was very savvy in terms of communication. He traveled to Livorno in Italy several times to make sure that the book is published. and he even published a pocket edition. So he knew how to sell the book, and the combination of his talent with writing the printing press made it popular. And that's why since then everybody goes with Shulchan Aruch. The Hafetz Haim, who wrote the Mishnah Berurah, also was very savvy. He knew how to publish his books. But then you could say that every time a major work is published or canonized for the Orthodox community, you have less diversity, because now the change occurs only within those frames, within this framework. If before the Mishnah, let's say we worked here and there was diversity here, then we narrowed it. So now, yes, the diversity within the box, and we keep narrowing it down. So now we narrow to the point that everybody, and I'm saying it, with quotation marks, everybody agrees that you have to have 3 meals on Shabbat. Everybody agrees that you have to have bread on each one of these meals. Everybody agrees that you have to have a kazayit bread. The question is only how fast you have to eat the bread. Right? They even forget, the Shulchan Aruch himself says, if you don't want to eat, don't eat. If it harms you, don't eat. I mean, all these things were forgotten. So we got like an halakha. So now, and that's a long discussion, but just on the tip that briefly that will be the answer. Now with specific question, first with women's role, and then Shabbat and Yom Tov. Women's role, right? How did we get to where we are today? The answer is that a lot of the halachot and the theology that we have today were formed in the rabbinic period. What the halakha that we follow today is the halakha of the Hachamim of the Mishnah and the Talmud. So their philosophy and their ideology dictated the world of halakha. So if you look at the Tanakh relatively is very progressive in the way it treats women. Yes, of course, there are some phrases, many phrases in Tanakh that are not so favorable to women, but overall, if you think of just the first chapter of the Tanakh, the first chapter of Tanakh, verses 26, 27 in chapter 1 of Bereshit, say, Vayivra Elohim et Adam betzalmo betzelem Elohim bara oto zachar unkeva bara otam. Couldn't be a greater statement to tell us that men and women are equal. Hashem created men, male and female. He created him together. He created them. Him, them are interchangeable. God tells us that tzelem Elohim has nothing to do with the body, whether you're male or female. It's something higher than that. And then, if those of you who read my commentary on Bereshit, if not, text me or email me, I'll send it to you. It's about 50, 60 pages on the first 2 chapters. I show that the first chapter is the ideal world, this is the world that God wants us to create, where men and women are equal. And the second chapter, where the woman is created as an afterthought taken from the rib, is man's world. We, men, we created this world where we think that women are lesser. Yeah. Shayna, so tell that, okay. Look at the comment. Nobody could tell him that. He's in a world all by himself. Do you think then later on, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, those are opinionated women who talk to their husbands and they know what they're doing. We have Devorah, we have Miriam, we have prophetesses, we have women who lead throughout the Tanakh. We have Hannah who teaches everyone to pray. There are amazing stories in the Tanakh. Mishlei, many of the character traits in the Mishlei are delivered in the voice of a woman. The Megillot, Shira Shirim, Ruth, Esther are by women. Kohelet, I think, also was written by a woman. There's a lot of it's not perfect. It's not what we would want to see. But if you think that this happened between 3,500 years ago to 2,200 years ago, that's pretty amazing. That is pretty advanced, right? What happened? The Greeks invaded Eretz Israel in the 3rd century before the Common Era and brought with them their hatred of women. The Greek culture was a misogynist culture. the bracha shelo asani isha. You know where the bracha, thank God for not making a woman, where did it come from? It came from one of the Greek philosophers who used to get up every morning and thank the gods for not making him a woman. Yes, all these brachot, all three brachot, shelo asani go, shelo asani isha, shelo asani aved, all these three brachot were created by, are influenced by Greek philosophers. And actually, B'ezrat Hashem, when I work on the Siddur, I'll incorporate the text of Rabbi Rabbi Sassoon, who have those berachot. Baruch hamakom shekira'anu avadav shekirevanu la'avodato. Wait, I want to see here. Shekirevanu la'avodato. That have blessed is Hashem who chose us, and everybody could be chosen. The second one, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu mecholam shekira'anu avadav. Not shelo asani aved, did not make me a slave. We are all servant of Hashem. And there, the last one, shebera'anu betzalmo, who created us in his tzelem Elokim. That's the Siddur. It's called Ve'arevna. Ve'arevna, the Siddur of Rabbi Sassoon. So that the Greeks and the Romans brought misogyny, and it influenced the Talmud. There are certain things in the Talmud that are just heartbreaking. The way, there are good things in the Talmud, but the thing is, Eben, is this the Siddur that you're using? I was wondering.
That's I got that.
Okay, very good. I was wondering because I saw the colors. I said yesterday, but it looked too big to be this one. Okay. So you go get the Siddur. Ve'arevna, and what is the one yours called? Yismach libenu.
How do I find Yismach Libeno? I can't find it online anywhere.
We can't hear you, Eben. Now, yes. Now we can. No, whatever. Please, Eben, we can't hear you. Put it on chat. On the chat and put titles of both Siddurim. Okay?
And how we can buy them.
Or maybe I'll ask Rabbi Sassoon to reprint them. So anyway, women's status deteriorated significantly at the time of the rabbis. And since then, because it has dominated our culture, we can't break away from it. Right?
Why rabbis didn't change it?
Because of that mentality that you can't instead of following a shofet asher yeh b'yamim hahem, right? You go with your contemporary judge. They said no, whatever the rabbi said back in the day, that's where we are. We don't change it. We can't change it. And in many cases, it was because it was convenient. Why challenge?
It's very sad actually, because I was looking for, especially for the bracha shelo asani isha, and I never understood it. Because what's the racism thing? Why? What did they do bad? So I found an answer that can make sense,
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I learned this 22 years ago. In 1996, I went to Bar Ilan University for my Talmud studies, and they showed me this quote from the Greek philosophers. And the professor who brought this quote said, we don't think we were influenced by the Greeks. Well, what do you mean? Obviously we were because he's observant, he was afraid to say that. Because obviously and since then, it's 22 years that I have stopped saying this beracha. Yeah, it always bothered me. And I don't say shelo asani isha, I don't say shelo asani aved, and I don't say shelo asani goy, because I feel that those are offensive and negative berachot. All the berachot hashahar are positive. Why should I say shelo? Why do I say those things that put down other people? And someone told me, so what do you say instead? I said, Sha'asali kol tzorki. That's good enough, right? Hashem provided me with everything I need. I should be thankful for that. And that brings us also to the issue of the mechitza. Where does the mechitza come from? The first Batei Knesset were called Beit Am, the house of gathering. And they were meant for people to congregate and talk about their issues in the village, in small towns. People knew each other. They schmoozed, The rabbis complain about people coming to shul to schmooze, right? But that was really what the early synagogues were about. The word synagogue, I remember someone complain that I'm saying shul. I say shul because it's the shortest word, shorter than even knis or bet knesset or anything or sla. But they're all in different. Shul is synagogue is not Hebrew either. It's Greek. It's to go together, like synergy or synthesize, and gogos, which is to go. So synagogos, we go together. It was such a place of gathering that one of the ancient sources says, criticizes people who come to pray in the synagogue. It says, hey, why are you praying here? Go home and pray at home. This is like you're showing off that you're a religious guy. But eventually it became a place of prayer. And as it became a place of prayer, their women were pushed out because it became men's club. That's our place. But I'll tell you, and I'm saying it, from a personal experience. Now that I've always enjoyed listening to my wife and daughter praying, but usually they pray on Shabbat when I'm in shul. But now that we're home and I hear them sitting together and praying, I said, how beautiful is their tefillah, and how much we're missing it in the synagogue. I wish we had tefillah like that in the synagogue. But where does the mechitza come from? That's once you push women away, you create the mechitza. Watch the movie Women's Balcony. That's a powerful movie about the mechitza.
And usually they are not counting the minyan, right?
And they don't count the from minyan. So I should tell you, I got a very interesting question about 2 years ago from Eshel. Eshel is an organization in America that helps religious Orthodox LGBTQ people, and they have a Shabbaton once in a while, and they had a problem with the mechitza. Like, where do you sit? You sit on the men's side, you sit on the women's side. So they come up with the suggestion of what they call trihitza, which some people do in other places, which is one section for people who want to be in the men's section, one for the women's section, and the other one is anyone can sit there.
There is nothing really mechitza between them.
It's like yes. So, but some people weren't comfortable with that. They said, they wanted to know that halachically it's okay. So they asked me to write a teshuvah on it, and I did, and I wrote this teshuvah. So I went to see what is the point of the mechitza? Is it to create a separation between men and women because their tefillot cannot be mixed, or what is the reason? And the reason that is eventually boils down to, in all of these sources, it's about hilul. If men will see women, they will have thoughts. So we should know they should have this mechitza. So the answer is, okay, don't look. Don't look. What do you need a mechitza for? You have a problem, put an eye cover. There are good sleeping masks. If you have that problem, go to shul, put it there, and learn the tefillah by heart. Anyway, I gave it tefillah. They were happy with it. Yes.
Hey, it's a thing where they come in with the very dark sunglasses all the time.
Yeah. Those I don't trust. The people who come with very dark glasses, you don't know where they're looking. So that's an issue. So anyway, that's the mechitza. And to me, the stagnation here comes from, because this is a term that was mentioned, is the unwillingness to understand and to see how society changed. And now, actually, I will address what Shana said. She said, tell it to Rabbi Yitzhak Yosef. What happened, what she refers to, I believe, to Shana, is about the ordination, right? The simicha. So what happens in Israel is that women appealed to the Supreme Court to allow them to take the courses of the chief rabbinate that will certify them as rabbis. That up until now, they will offer only to men. So the Supreme Court ruled that women are eligible to join and take those tests like anyone else. Why not? Nobody, primarily because the chief rabbinate is a government institution. The chief rabbi gets his money from the taxpayer. How can he run an institution that discriminates against women, right? If you're a private institution, do whatever you want, But as a government sponsored, I mean, that also is not so clear that you could do whatever you want. But maybe you could have argued that. But now that you're sponsored by the government, of course. What was the response of the chief rabbi? He said, if this will be the case, we will stop the test for everyone. Nobody will be tested. Nobody will be certified. What are you saying? You're saying, okay, if there are smart women here who want to be rabbis, and they think that they're going to be ordained by us, we'll stop ordaining. There will be no men, no women ordained. You know what will happen? They will find another venue. Right? Instead of going to the chief rabbinate, they will give to the chief rabbitzin. And this is what they'll have. Yes, Shayna.
So a couple of things. One, the articles that I read made it clear that the women weren't wanting to become rabbis. They're wanting to be able to pass the test and be certified so they can be in government positions that have the same pay scale as men.
I didn't see that, but still.
His most recent speech said that any woman who wants to take this test is to be like a Reform Jew, and a Reform Jew has bastardized Judaism.
Yeah. So they automatically equate learning women with reform, right? That look around you. And by the way, there were many Orthodox rabbis, but unfortunately, most of them are Sephardim. I say unfortunately, I'm saying because it's haval that other people cannot see that. Rabbi Moshe Malka of Petah Tikva, Rabbi Yosef Meshash, Rabbi David Shlush, they all say, look what women are doing. We have to realize that whatever they said in the past came from a stern mentality. They thought this is what we meant. Okay. So yeah, that has to change, definitely. Eruv. Now we're running out of time, so I'll just address those things briefly, but next week, maybe, I'm saying it now, and I'll say it in the chat, I might take a break from classes for a week or 10 days because my voice is giving me a problem, and I need to rest that, and I need also to work on my book. I'm planning to put my book out, and I need to edit it and push it through. I have about 900 pages to edit, so just first editing. So the Eruv, to Yosef, I wrote a long article on the Eruv, and the evidence is out there. There are many leading poskim who say the streets are different, the way we live is different. There are so many statements out there that show us that throughout the ages, the rabbis tried to get rid of this problem of the Eruv. And they provided us with the Halakhic tools. So, but when you come and say, let us use the tool, I'm not going to go into details, but when you say, because like you said, it's very complicated, it seems to be complicated. But the thing is, when you say here, the analogy is, the way in my mind, this is the analogy. Someone is locked in the house, and everybody goes around the house and says, like, how are we going to get in? And you come and say, here's the key. And you say, yeah, but we never used that key. Okay, but here's the key. Go in. In the remind me a different skit that I years ago in Israel. There was a group called Comedy Store, and they had like an interesting skit. So this is like they say Antica. This is like in 1985 or 1990, whatever. So the guy gets out of his car, slams the door, and then he goes, "Oh my God, I forgot the keys in." The guy knows. So the other guy said, "What happened?" He says, "I forgot the keys in the car." So they go around the car like, "Whoa, what happened?" He says. Then the other guy says, "But wait a second, it's a convertible." So the first guy says, "That's exactly the problem. It's about to rain. It's going to rain." So this is how I feel like we're Hachmei Helem. The key is there, Just go in just go get it. Okay, that's what they are. Yom Tov Sheni and music on Yom Tov. So I'll address this briefly. Music on Yom Tov. First of all, people used to play music on Shabbat also. Even though in the Mishnah it says that you don't play music on Shabbat, but it says we don't play music because we fear that someone will build an instrument. And here again, the Hebrew is crucial because the Mishnah says letaken keli. So people think it means to fix an instrument, like if a violin, a string, the guitar broke.
The guitar.
Yeah, but no, it says that technically means to build an instrument. That's the problem. We don't build instruments today. Most people don't know how to do that. So in the 14th century, Rabbi Menachem Meiri writes that the students of Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, no less, came from Gerona to Provence, and they used to play on Shabbat, bekinor, which probably means oud or harp or something, and he stopped them. Okay, so that stopped. But at least if you want to know if someone played music on Shabbat, yes, the Talmidim of Ramban used to do that. Up until the 19th century, it was common in Jewish communities, mentioned in Shulchan Aruch, mentioned by Haim Ovadia Yosef, that if you have a wedding, of course people have wedding and then they have Shabbat Hatan, you want to have music for Shabbat Hatan, you hire a non-Jewish band to come and play music on Shabbat in the religious community, and it was done all over. But we don't do it today. Okay, problem. What about Yom Tov? Yom Tov, you could use electricity, right? Why not music? The answer is there's no reason why not to. Except for how you would feel the spirit of Yom Tov. So I would, if you play an acoustic instrument, that's okay. Drums, maybe some people would say, not so much. And definitely, I mean, electric could be a problem. But if you want to hear, not play music, but listen to music on Yom Tov, and it soothes you, and within a certain context, I'm not saying, I'm going to do it in my house, but if it's needed, there's no reason why not to do it. As long as you know how to keep the parameters of Yom Tov. And finally, Yom Tov Sheni. That is the classic example of being stuck in one place. The rabbis established Yom Tov Sheni because of the inability to foretell the exact date of the holidays. But now that we know and we have the calendar, it's all set up, we know exactly when every holiday will be, there's no reason to do that. The Rabbi David Shlush writes about it in his introduction to Hamda Genuzah, and he concludes the only reason that we don't do it is because the rabbis are afraid and too busy fighting with one another. So what would be there's a simple solution for that. I told Joey, where's Joey? Still with us? Joey Shama? Yeah. Okay. I put Joe in charge of that. We're creating the Yom Tov Sheni Club. And it's a timeshare. We're going to buy an apartment in Israel. Each one invests $1. So you have we need a little more than $1 to get an apartment in Israel. We'll get 1,000 people. Each one will put $100, and then you own a place in Israel, and you want to do Aliyah. So you could be like an Israeli and do one Yom Tov. And so instead of attacking head on, you'll have to use legal loophole.
Gymnastics.
Yeah. Nathaniel, you had another question. I saw your head is up from before.
I put it in the chat, but it was about the machitza. If observant communities always used one, and is there really technically a problem with not using one?
I think, in my opinion, if men and women, in most cases, men and women don't want to sit together. The men don't want. I tell you why. The men don't want the women to hear them gossiping, and not praying, because usually the women will look at the wife would look at her husband and says, "You're not praying." But if she sees what he does in the synagogue, she says, "You leave the house every Shabbat for 3 hours and do that," right? And the women don't want the men to sit there because they're annoyed by them. They want to have their own private conversation or to concentrate on tefillah. What would be the ideal situation is to give people a choice. I think the Torah is a perfect solution to divide the synagogue if here's the teva is in the front, to the right and to the left, a place for men and women, and in the back, a section where men and women can sit together. Because there are a lot of people who don't go to shul because they do want to, for them, an hour or two sitting together, maybe they come for the derasha. So you could do family sitting. Why not?
But what if you have a community like maybe not making a hard and fast rule to say that the women have to be front and then the back is all together, but depending on the community, because what if there was a community where more people wanted to sit together, and there were some who wanted it separate, and then you had it like the whole front was for men, and then the back
Yeah.
like men and women, whatever needed according to the needs of the community.
Yeah, I agree. And what I wanted to say when you mentioned that young Israel, go research the history of young Israel in America up until the 1950s. The synagogues of young Israel, all the congregation, were mixed seating. Meaning, Sefaradim and Ashkenazim said that. No, I'm kidding. Men and women sat together in young Israel. Yes, Kamil, and I want to also address what EJR, which I don't know. EJR, what is the who is that? E Junior, I guess. Okay, Kasriel.
I was gonna say about the mechitza, like here in Tallahassee, like they have there's a Chabad center here, and they have it set up like that where it's men on one side, women on the other, mechitza in the front, and then in the back, people can choose to sit, if they want to sit together or not. So
yeah, I think it's fair. And so Eugene Rosenthal just commented that the Yom Tov Sheni is not justified today because of the communication methods, which I wrote in my article. Because those who say that we can't go back to one Yom Tov, they say, what if the Beit HaMikdash will be rebuilt and we'll go back to the system of sending messenger on horseback, right? We're not going to do that. I mean, unless we have an apocalypse where that's all power plants, all electricity, everything is gone. By then, I think we'll have other things to worry about than
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to start Arvit, and yes, Daphna, the like I said, the answer of the Trahita was written specifically for the request of the LGBT Shabbaton, because people wanted to know how to do that.
But
Yeah.
at least in Ashkenaz shuls, the mechitza is in the middle, and the women are side by side. And in the Sephardic shuls,
now
all the way in the back, or they're
not in the
upstairs.
Ashkenazi shuls, in the modern Ashkenazi synagogues. Yeah.
At least they give the women some respect, and they can.
Let me tell you something. I pray in a modern, the shul where we have a Sephardic minyan, right? In a larger shul.
Right.
So it's an open Orthodoxy synagogue.
Right.
So on Shabbat, the Sefer Torah is carried through Ezrat Nashim. So they bring the Sefer Torah to the women's side, and the women carry it to the other side, and then give it. It's beautiful.
Very nice.
So on Rosh Hashanah, and my minyan, when we took out the Sefer Torah, one of the women came and asked me if the Sefer Torah could go through the Ezrat Nashim. For the man who carries it to go through the Nashim. I said, yeah, why not? Of course. And one of the congregants gets so upset. It's like, we don't do that. We never did that. Like, what happened?
I'm sure.
So I said, but wait, they do it he says, no, the only thing they do is they let a woman carry it. Oh, wow, that's a huge difference. Anyway, let's start our Vit because people need to go. No, not because people need to go. We could stay forever, but I want to be to adhere to the timetable as much as possible. והוא רחום יכפר עוון ולא ישחית ובא להשיב בפניו אותו אדוני יושיע המלך יעננו ביום קוראנו ברכו את אדוני המבורך
ברוך אדוני המבורך
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני אלו מלך העולם וזמרים הערבים בחוכמה פותח שערים אלוהים שלנים ועד הזמנים סוחבים בורים המלילה גוללו מעבירים מלילה ומלילה אדוני זבות שמו ברוך אתה אדוני המערים הערבים אהבת עולם וצמח אהבת תורה ומצוות, אומרים את דברים למטה, על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו ובקומנו נעשה בחוקי רב ונשמח ונעלו ונודך ונשמעים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב את עמו ישראל, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו אדוני